I do have another layer to add as we go. And again, I could be wrong. And in fact, I'll preface this. When I saw The Force Awakens, at first I didn't like it. And then I thought I understood something about it. And I changed my mind. And I decided I did like The Force Awakens until everything that came after went out the window. When she beat Kylo Ren in that lightsaber fight. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like she wins? Like that's supposed to be the last battle. You know, the villain is the one that always wins. It's the hero that can't win and finally does in the end. But there was a scene where when she was fighting him, they cross lightsabers and it plays Luke Skywalker's theme. And she closes her eyes and it plays Luke Skywalker's theme. And my dad pointed out, he goes, that's Luke's theme. And I was like, oh, she's remembering her training. I was like, oh, she didn't beat him for the first time. Like she was trained. She was a Jedi. She's remembering who she is. But that's not what they did. That's not at all what happened. So I want to preface this, that what this episode might mean could be thrown out the window in episode 6.
That's the problem. Yes. Right. That is the key, is like everything, all the theories, all the ideas, all the things that are linking up to something maybe cool is just like, nope, that's not what it was about at all. I just would, we have to see. I mean, there's nothing left but that. But the curiosity about this other world is really what's got, it's pretty much the only thing that's keeping me like really interested. And more scenes with Balin to find out what's his story. Like, okay, I'm curious about that. I mean, I did enjoy this episode for the member berries. It was great, and I did enjoy it for the deeper context of learning about Ahsoka's mental state. I like that.
Well, I'm just going to say this: you might be right, totally, in 100% right, that these were mainly member berries. I hope I'm right that there was more here, because if they just treat them as member berries, then they might have squandered the final little opening where we could squeeze through and get an end to Star Wars again.
This was supposed to be it.
My God. So
we keep being told that, though.
But here's the thing, though. Like, they've really damaged this brand so much that Ahsoka was something new. We haven't really seen her live action. So I think some people were willing to give her a chance. She's not a Kathleen Kennedy heroine. She really came before all that. She does suffer. She did fail. Like, there's so much about Ahsoka Tano that I like. In fact, love. I think she's a great character. I have her figurine next to Rex up there. So anyway, so there's the chance that this is all member berries. I believe that there might be more, and I'll say why. But the first time that she falls into the dreamscape, out of the world between worlds, apparently, and into this setting, she lands. And here's where we meet Ariana Greenblatt's version of Ahsoka Tano. Young, I think 13 or 14-year-old Ahsoka Tano. So young.
Everybody seems to just be going crazy about it. Seems like.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Which is rare. It's rare that everyone is so positive. So, she says, she's like, we're in the Clone Wars. And so right away, just to be upfront, I've watched this episode multiple times already, specifically the Anakin Ahsoka parts, multiple times. And she's standing there, and suddenly these clone troopers start coming out, poof, poof, like out of the mist behind her, and start running past her. And I'm very sensitive to archetypal designs and archetypal elements in stories. And to me, this was perfect example of liminal space. We don't see where the clones come from. We don't see where they're headed. They have no beginning. They have no end.
I think that's a fantastic point, Doug. I think it's a fantastic point.
And I think that's the only reason.
Is fantastic.
It's the only reason this low budget scene works. Because they just run past her in the present moment towards some unseen front line.
You said unknown where they're coming from.
Unknown.
You can think about this, and it would be worse if you saw where they were coming from or where they're going to.
Right.
You're completely right about it. Dreamscape, troopers coming out from an unknown behind out of the mist and then charging into an unknown forward. That's so important. And Doug thought that it's incredible to this scene. It absolutely is.
Yeah. Visually too. Yeah, it's incredible.
Well, and it's exaggerated but it's almost to me like a fantasia of war. You see the silhouettes of those walkers kind of moving through the background. You hear the sounds and the silhouettes of the gunships passing by. You see the lasers, zipping by in certain ropes of light. And then you see the lightsaber, and Anakin walks into the scene, and he gives the most basic war command: forward. Just this generic command of war. We're moving forward through this liminal space. And he turns and he's like, "Come on, Snips, let's go." And she's like, "This is the Clone Wars." He's like, "No kidding, let's go." And this is where we get to see Ariana Greenblatt's physicality in her acting that Retro was talking about. She's very good. She's very fast with her sword, very convincingly swatting away lasers. She reacts to explosions. She's very physical in this. And when she's running, she doesn't look like she's a girl running on a sound stage. She's running, like she's sprinting through these things and running through, and she just runs into the mist, into the nothingness that's laying ahead and disappears. So it's very dreamlike in that. And when she returns, we have another reset fantasia of war. There's all these clone troopers. They're down. They're in gurneys. There's parked walkers and gunships just laying stationary. And this is why I think we might be shifting into good storytelling, because you don't see this in Disney Star Wars ever without a single word of dialogue. I can't compliment this scene enough. Without a single word of dialogue, she looks at the clone trooper. He's so wounded, his face is covered up. And she sits next to him and she grabs his hand, and the clone trooper reaches over and grabs hers too.
Grabs hers, yes.
It's such a poignant scene. She doesn't even say anything. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, that's poignant.
Yeah.
She cares about these guys.
Yeah.
These are clones. They're all the same. But the fact that he needed that, he's laying there in this, he needed it. He wanted, when she tried to comfort him, he accepts that comfort that she's getting. And you can see she drops her head and she's kind of emotional about it. She's in that moment weighing out the cost of war is how I cook this. Like, this is too high of a cost, is what she seems to be feeling.
And she feels responsible for it, because she says they were just following my orders. And there's a lot of guilt on her part for all these years. For all these years that she's had that in her mind, that she led these people to die. And so, it can be very, like, having memories like that, it would be horrible, like to have. So I felt a big, huge load of sympathy for her at that point, because it's like, oh my God, this has been, this is her the weight on her shoulders. And they should have played into this more all through it's just a shame we're getting this at episode 5.
Well, it's even more bizarre when I introduce what I think could be happening, that it would be this late. I mean like 7 years too late. But so we have this poignant moment, and then Anakin comes over, and this moment is followed up on by the writer. She doesn't just have this moment, we move on. They have dialogue. Like, she follows up. She's like, like you just said, Retro, it's my fault. They were following my orders. The cost of this is too high. And Anakin we get a good look at Clone Wars Anakin, and he looks good. Like, he had the short hair, and the Vader thing over his chest that I always thought was cool. And we see him the way he's portrayed in the Clone Wars, which is as heroic and compassionate. He's really good in the Clone Wars. In the movies, he was a little bit more emote.
Yeah.
So here he's giving her, he's like, well, you have to fight. Emo. Yeah, very emo. Yeah, he's very emo, and kind of a little too young in some cases. But he tells her, he's like, she's like, doesn't it bother you that so many have died? And Anakin is like, of course. Like, he's like, yeah, it really does bother me. He's like, but this is a war. And he tells her, he goes, I am trying to teach you to be a leader and a warrior. Mm-hmm. And she says, and I love her follow-up question, is this what I was supposed to be trained for as a Jedi? She's asking, I think, the most fundamental question of the entire failure of the Jedi Order.
Absolutely.
Yes, they were destroyed by this. So she's asking the fundamental question, the question, is this what I'm trained for, to be a soldier? And Anakin gives the logic of the era answer. We have to adapt to the times. As a Jedi, we have to adapt to the times, and I'm going to teach you to be a leader. So he's giving her the best possible reason why the Jedi would shift their focus to war fighting. And he acknowledges, when I was a Padawan, Obi-Wan taught me to be a peace keeper of the peace. But now there's this war. We have to lead this war, and we're the best, suited to do it. And this really bothers her. And then there's the scene that everyone's talking about. And this scene